Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this special episode of the OTT Red Spotlight podcast. Usually when I'm interviewing people for the Spotlight podcast, we're looking at their career, the way their career has grown and blossomed, or we're talking about the products that their business brings to market. The conversation that I'm going to have with James Twitchett today is looking at his career in a unique moment through a unique type of lens. I spend a lot of time training people and coaching people on LinkedIn. And when James's path crossed with mine, he was at a juncture where a lot of the principles and benefits that I try to advocate were becoming highly relevant to him. James is such a good example of how to utilize LinkedIn and the kind of benefits and gains that you can make, that I invited him to jump on this podcast with me so that we could journal his story, distill his experiences, and start to really understand what it's like when you go into a period of your career where you're trying to blossom the next chapter and using all of the tools at your disposal to be as creative and productive as possible. James, welcome to the OTT Red Spotlight podcast.
Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
It's a pleasure to have this conversation because when I remember absolutely clearly where I was in the toy room with my kids when I think we connected on WhatsApp and we were chatting away, and I looked at your background and thought, this guy's got an amazing background, you know, for, I hope you don't mind me saying this, a relatively young guy. The stage that you'd got to was pretty phenomenal. You know, you clearly are on an upward trajectory. And then we came across each other because you'd come into a moment in your career where you were trying to engineer whatever the next thing would be. Do you want to set the stage for everyone who's listening to this or watching it on what that moment was?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Maybe I look younger than I am. I'm 36. I'd been at BT for 7 years, and then I moved over to the B2B side and worked for Deltatre for 7 years, and had some really great opportunities there that enabled me to like lead teams and head up product strategy there. And then I'd kind of decided that I needed my next challenge. I'd achieved what I could achieve at Deltatre, and it felt to me like I needed to push myself into a position where I needed to find the next thing. And I toyed with it a couple of times and thought about, you know, should I do this covertly like so many people do, or should I kind of bite the bullet and put myself out there as a way to hopefully having more opportunities come at me and the right opportunity for me for the next step.
Yeah,
so that
I remember it well.
Last year, yeah.
I remember it. I actually just remembered you were in your car the first time we spoke to each other. So you jumped off, basically. You had a lot of conviction, and when I believe in myself enough to jump off and back myself to get the right next job to allow that kind of growth that you believed you had the potential for. What did you experience once you jumped off?
I remember I actually filmed myself shutting my laptop on the Friday when I finished, and I thought to myself, this is the first time in 20 years that I've not had any gainful employment. And wow. I suddenly had funny things cross my mind, like, how am I going to run a diary? Like, I need a calendar. I need, like, not a personal one that I share with my wife that I would clog up and annoy her, but, you know, I don't have like a diary to be able to run because I've always run it on my business page. So I quickly, a lot of scenarios came to me when I shut that laptop on. I'm now running on my own. Like, I'm not an employee of a previous company anymore, and I need to quickly work out how I'm going to operate day to day and have a structure to my day. So yeah, that was the first point that crossed my head, because I had people saying, I'll send you an invite, and I was like, well, I don't know what I'm doing at that time, because I'm in this new way of operating my life. So yeah, it was quite interesting.
I hope you're enjoying the podcast. Look, the brand elevation that this podcast over the last 5 seasons has brought for OTT Red, my brand, and in this season, sponsors as well, is something that I want to make available to you. If you're enjoying this podcast and you'd like to get this section of the next season to elevate your own brand, then please reach out to me. It's really interesting whenever I have these kind of conversations with people, things like that they share with me that you wouldn't have really had any compulsion to think about before. And then when you're in the moment, you're like, yeah, of course. One of the things that I loved watching was the way that you used LinkedIn. But before we go into what you started to do on LinkedIn, I want you to share with me and people listening and watching, what was your view of LinkedIn before the moment you've just described? How had you used it previously in your career?
I used it very little when I was at BT. I think particularly for people that work in a large B2C organization, you often have access to everything that you need within your organization. You might get the odd request from someone that you've met that week, and you'll click accept, and you won't really think that much more of it. There's an element where LinkedIn has been continuing to mature over that time, and I'm talking about sort of 2015, 2016 here. But I think that in a big B2C organization, you are a little bit cocooned from feeling that you need to necessarily understand what's going on elsewhere, because you have everything you need within your internal messaging systems. So I didn't use it very much at BT. I got headhunted into the role that I was at Deltatre. So again, I didn't really have to do very much proactively. I did start to use it a little bit more when I was at Deltatre, because in a B2B environment, you need to understand more about the vendors and the competition, etc. You are naturally a bit more tuned in, but still relatively limited use, like sharing when someone in my team was hiring for a role and just trying to say, you know, we're hiring for a role. That was probably 80% of my posts. I think I'd maybe post 4 times a year, maybe saying, oh, there's a role in my team. Please let me know if you're interested. But no recruiters, no Chris. Please.
I've definitely seen those posts.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're out there. You'd worked out you needed a diary. You had to crystallize the outcome that you wanted from leaving Deltatre. What happened in week 1 and 2?
So I curated a thoughtful post about leaving. I made sure I had a really good picture of me and the team at a workshop in Italy sharing lunch together, and I summarized some of the things that I thought went really well at Deltatre and where some of my core skills were within that. I decided not to put the green banner on. I kind of toyed with that in my head a little bit, and I thought, you know what, initially I'm gonna see what happens from more of my own organic posts and use that as my backbone to try and drive engagement. So I did that, and I also spoke to you and a couple of other recruiters to get the word out there that I was looking for my next job.
So you basically you didn't just, this is the point that I always say to people, have a multiple strategy, parallel lines of activating the market's recognition that you're available. You spoke to me, some of my peer group within the industry. I've no doubt you probably had some conversations with hiring manager, senior level contacts, and you started using LinkedIn. That's when I started watching and thinking, this is interesting, because we've got someone here that's got really good reputational equity. They've done some pretty cool stuff with their career. And all of a sudden I started to see these posts coming out, and every single time you made another post, the images that you were using, like you said, and the copy, the way that you composed the copy was really smart, and it was getting more and more traction all the time. You know, I could visibly see the numbers going up. How did that feel between posts for you? What were you learning from those posts, and kind of what stage did you start to get to? Or did you ever start to feel like, I'm getting this, I'm beginning to nail this, it's getting good traction for me?
Yeah, I think there's always a hesitancy of people of, if I put a lot of effort into this post, what happens if no one cares? What happens if I just put it out there and I did spend, you know, sometimes half an hour writing a post. because I never used AI. I wanted it to be 100% authentic me and my thoughts. And I think some people would be worried that they maybe wouldn't get very good traction and no one would care what they were saying. But people do care what you're saying. People, almost probably 60 to 70% of the people that are on your LinkedIn list know who you are, and the other people are interested in who you are, even if they don't know you personally. So if you write stuff that is thought-provoking and honest and true to who you are as a person, people will react, and as they react, you will get pushed further up the algorithm. And one of the things I learned from you was to make sure you comment back and interact with the people that are willing to comment on your post. Like, one, because it's polite; two, because it doubles the amount of activity that are on your post, like without you needing to really do too much. So those two things were great learnings from the first couple, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting, whenever I deliver any of the training and I've got these 10 points, these 10 rules now that I've developed since we first spoke to each other. But really what I've realized those 10 principles do is guide people towards the recognition that being successful on LinkedIn, to do what I call job farming, that you executed on really, really well, is recognize that there's an ecosystem of activities, not just about the post. It's not just about the image you use, even the headline on your profile, so that when you leave a comment on someone else's thing, there's something arresting there that makes people scroll down and actually go, oh, that's interesting. They go onto your profile, and if you've already extended a connection request to them, they see accept rather than invite. Did you have a tangible mindset about extending lots of other invitations to try and grow your relevant network?
I was relatively selective on that. I'll tell you what I did do outside of the post that I did, though, was I got a lot more involved in other conversations and discussions. So I would, because I had a bit more spare time, I was leaning in more to interesting discussions that I saw happening on my wall and posting and commenting, provoking thoughts, and that led to people clicking through onto my profile. So I don't think you always have to go as far as making your own post all the time, because sometimes that can be a little bit challenging, particularly when you're in a scenario where you're working for someone. You might be worried about their perception on how much you're saying while you're employed by them. There are always other ways in which you can get involved and increase your profile. As you say, having a great profile kind of title and posting and commenting thought-provoking things that lead to clicks to your page, that has somewhat of the same result as well.
I feel as though within the OTT Red community, when you were doing that, it kind of became a bit iconic. Like, everyone knew James was going to make great posts when you post them. I remember one that you posted from your garden. I don't even know why I remember this one. It was like a shovel buried in the ground. But that it just shows you. Like, I was one of your followers. I was watching everything that you're doing. I was looking forward to the next post, and everyone in the community, I've got the notifications set to all on. So whenever they post, I never look at my feed. I just go straight to my notifications. Right. Whenever I saw one of yours, I was like, okay, what's it going to be this time? Did you develop a kind of methodology on what to post or how frequently to post?
Sort of. I posted a series. What I did was I posted a series of learning. So one of the things I did after I joined my new company was I thought, now I can reflect on this strange time that I put myself in for 3 months of my life that I hadn't been in before. And I thought, I've picked up some interesting learnings in that period, and what I'm going to do is post about it roughly weekly. I've found for me that weekly is about the right cadence. I probably need to do a new post in the next week or so to keep up with that. But weekly, and when I did it with a consistent topic in mind, you start to, it's similar to social media, right? Like, or YouTube particularly, where a lot of YouTubers will post on a regular day of the week, and people begin to know and understand what they're going to get. Even though this was a mini series that I did, I posted the same headline each time saying, learnings from being Jobless episode 1. And people then build affinity, and they're like, oh yeah, I remember seeing this last post, I'm going to lean into this post, and hopefully it gets a bit more engagement. So, and I would generally keep them a similar kind of length, and always with a photo as well, to try and captivate the audience a bit more.
Yeah. What would you say your attitude towards LinkedIn is now? I mean, you got the job you wanted. It's providing you with great growth opportunities. I know the organization you're at, some fantastic people there. What's your view now of LinkedIn, and what would your advice be to other people who were probably in the situation that you described before?
Yeah, my view is I wish I'd started a bit earlier. I was doing enough that it wasn't completely jarring to put out that first post, but I wish I'd done more in advance, so more people in my sphere of influence knew who I was and knew what I stood for, so that when I came into that period in my life where I did need, support and opportunities from other people, that I'd already sown the seeds before I'd got there. And it kind of sounds like maybe, this is preemptive, because I know it's what you talk about, but I really went through that journey and felt a very similar thing, that I think it's about continuing to let people know who you are and what you stand for, so that when your inevitable time comes, you're as best prepared for it, rather than closing your laptop like I did on that Friday and being like, what do I do now?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
my plan is I'm not sure I'll be able to keep it up as regularly as I was before, but I would like to continue to at least make posts like once every 2 weeks. So that kind of community and discussion keeps going.
And we're talking about this obviously in the context of people and their careers and jobs and that sort of stuff. One of my beliefs, as I've got further into my journey and recognition of what the potential of utilizing LinkedIn is how much companies underutilize LinkedIn to actually sell their product and do things on. I think here I am a few years into this and having worked with a lot of people, I look at company pages and think, imagine if the company went through a similar journey to what individuals do, how much more they could farm and harvest now. Because it's absolutely amazing when I look at a lot of companies in our space, how few followers they've got. And I just think, wow, if a company could actually use its own page and also trust its employees to start talking about the products that they've got, what the individual's perspective of those products is or are, I actually think there's a massive horizon of opportunity that's currently not really been explored for companies to start to take advantage of, the famous algorithm and the way that at the moment we do as people.
Yeah,
James, what would your go on?
I was going to say, you've got to go where the eyeballs are, right? And the eyeballs aren't going to necessarily be naturally going towards said company's website to understand what's going on, particularly in a B2B context, but they probably are on LinkedIn, and therefore you end up getting drawn into topics that you just wouldn't see otherwise, because you're not naturally going to a B2B vendor's website on a Tuesday morning when you're having your coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. I fundamentally believe that, but I don't think many businesses are quite there yet when it comes to being able to get their head around it. James, what would your one piece of advice be to somebody who maybe either through their own decision or not is in a situation where they're sat at their desk and going, what do I do next? How do I create and crystallize the job that I want? What would your piece of advice be from everything that you experienced and learned?
I would say have confidence in yourself and put yourself out there and be slightly vulnerable, because you'll be surprised about the reaction and the support that you'll have from people within your network. Simple as that.
Fully agree with you. That's what I've witnessed dozens of times with people, and it's reassuring to hear you offer that up as the piece of advice for people. That, James, I'm really happy that you are where you are. you know, we've had a chat about some of the individuals that I know and love in that organization, and I just want to say thanks for taking the time to share your story of that chapter in your life and your career with people who I think will deeply and personally appreciate being able to listen to someone else talk about their journey. Thanks very much, James.
See you soon. Thanks.